The Mafia boss spent every Christmas alone, until she changed his fate. Luca Rossi enforced his Christmas tradition with solitary precision. A silent walk through the festive city, a ghost haunting the joy he could never touch. But this Christmas Eve, a woman with light in her eyes and defiance in her heart grabbed the silk tie that was his noose and pulled. And in that single shocking tug, his frozen fate began to crack. He was a ghost in a $5,000 suit. A man who watched joy from a distance, believing it was a country he could never enter. His rule was simple: feel nothing. It was the only way to survive. She was the opposite, a force of light and connection, fighting for the heart of her neighborhood. And on this Christmas Eve, she saw the ghost and decided to make him feel alive. It was one touch, one moment, a hand on a silk tie, a gentle, firm pull from the darkness into the light, and it cracked his frozen world wide open. To protect her, he thought he had to vanish, to become the ghost again. But some lights, once seen, can never be unseen. So he faced the most terrifying choice of his life: the safety of the shadows, or the risk of a single, lasting light. This is the story of the Christmas a lonely man was pulled from the dark and found his way home. Don't miss a moment of this story. This isn't just a tale you watch, it's a community you join. We're about to change a lonely man's fate together, and your spot is reserved. Hit subscribe so you don't get left behind in the cold. The story starts now. The most dangerous man in the city spent Christmas Eve alone. It was the one rule he never broke. His name was Luca Rossi. He owned buildings. He made men afraid with a single look. He ruled from a tall, cold tower of glass and steel. But one night each year, he left his fortress. He put on a perfect black suit, smoothed a tie the color of a midnight sky, and went down to where the people lived. He did not come to celebrate. He came to watch. He was watching now. From the edge of the bustling square, he was a statue. The Christmas festival swirled around him, a river of light and noise and smelling of fried dough and pine. Children shrieked with laughter. A band played cheerful, clumsy songs. Families hugged, friends toasted, lovers kissed under mistletoe. Luca absorbed none of it. His handsome face was a mask. His sharp jaw was clenched. His eyes, a frosty blue, tracked the movements of the crowd but showed no feeling. He was a ghost haunting his own life. This walk was his tradition, his secret pain. It reminded him of everything he had and everything he could never truly have. A warmth that was not for him. Across the square, a war was being waged for joy. The general was a woman named Chiara Santoro. Her command post was a heated tent, and her army was made of volunteers. Her world was beautiful chaos. "The giant squid is deflating," yelled her friend Sophie, holding up a lumpy, leaking rubber creature. "The mayor's aide is on hold, and he sounds cranky," called a teenager from a laptop. "Nana Luciana can't find her frying pan," came another voice. Chiara just grinned, her brown eyes sparkling. Okay. Sophie, find the squid's plug. Marco, tell the mayor's aide we have fresh cannoli for him. Mia, help Nana, check near the espresso machine." She moved through the tent like a dancer, putting out fires with a laugh. This festival was her heart. It was her father's legacy. And this year it was in trouble. A new text flashed on her phone screen. It was from the company that owned the square. Final warning. Permit invalid at midnight. The smile on Chiara's face didn't fade, but it changed. It became determined. Harder. The money from the community was gathered, but it was a desperate, last-minute pile of cash. One piece of paperwork could still ruin everything. She needed a Christmas miracle, or at least a distraction. She stepped to the tent's opening, pulling her red sweater tight against the cold. She looked out at the crowd she loved. Her people. Their faces glowed in the light of 1,000 bulbs. This was worth fighting for. Then, her gaze snagged on a patch of darkness. There, where the light from the fairy strings didn't quite reach, a man stood alone. He was tall, dressed in a suit that looked more expensive than her entire budget. He was impossibly handsome, with a strong, serious face. And he looked empty, like a shell. He watched the festival but wasn't part of it. He was a shadow. She'd seen him before, she realized. Last Christmas. A silent watcher at the edge of the light. A sudden, powerful feeling hit her in the chest. It wasn't fear. It was a deep, sad understanding. On this night of all nights, no one should be that alone. Her festival was about bringing people together. About light. Maybe her miracle tonight wasn't just about money or permits. Maybe it was about a lonely man in a midnight blue tie, standing frozen in the dark. Without overthinking it, driven by a compulsion she didn't fully understand, Chiara smoothed her hair. She took a deep, steadying breath of the cold, fragrant air. And she started walking. Not to fix a squid or placate a mayor. She walked straight toward the shadow. Luca saw her coming. His first instinct was cold alarm. A breach of protocol. No one approached him during the walk. His body went still, a predator assessing a threat. She was not a threat. She was a young woman in a bright red sweater, her cheeks pink from the cold, her expression determined but not angry. His second instinct was to leave, to melt back into the alley and disappear. This is what he always did, but his feet stayed rooted to the cobblestones. He watched her weave through the crowd. Her eyes were locked on his. They were warm. He had not seen a warm look directed at him in years. People looked at him with fear, respect, or greed. Never with simple, human warmth. A strange, foreign feeling stirred in his chest. Panic. Don't, he thought. A silent command he sent her way. Just turn around. She did not turn around. She stopped right in front of him. She was close enough that he could see the gold specks in her brown eyes. She smelled like cinnamon and snow. You look like you lost your invitation to the party, she said. Her voice was clear and kind, not scared at all. Luca said nothing. He just looked down at her, his face a blank wall. He hoped his silence would be a wall she could not cross. It wasn't. She tilted her head. It's no fun just watching. The best part is in the middle. She glanced over her shoulder toward the center of the square, where a huge, unlit Christmas tree stood waiting. The stage lights were bright there. The crowd was thickest there. Then she did it. Her hand came up. Not in a wave. Not for a handshake. Her fingers closed firmly around the smooth silk of his tie, right where the knot sat perfectly against his throat. Luca's breath caught. No one touched him. Ever. She gave a gentle but firm tug. It was a direct, physical invitation he could not ignore without a fight. His body moved before his mind could command it. He took one stumbling step forward, out of the deep shadow and into the soft glow of the overhead lights. The world seemed to tilt. The blur of the crowd, the music, the smells, it all rushed in, loud and bright and real. He was no longer watching the scene. He was in it. In that exact moment, as if on a cosmic cue, the giant Christmas tree behind the stage exploded with light. Thousands of bulbs flashed on at once, red, gold, green, and white. The crowd roared with delight. The light was so bright it painted her face in gold and cast his own shadow long behind him. She smiled up at him, still holding his tie. Her smile was triumphant and beautiful. "See," she said, her voice barely audible over the cheering. "Better in the light." Luca could not speak. He could only feel. The warmth of her hand near his throat. The dazzling light of the tree. The crushing weight of a decade of loneliness cracking open. Just a little. It was terrifying. He was Luca Rossi. He was the ghost. He was the boss. And he had just been pulled into the light by a stranger who smelled of cinnamon. The shock held Luca for only 3 more seconds. Then the cold flood of reality crashed back in. He was standing in the open, lit up like a target. His security was blocks away because of his own stupid order. This woman had her hand on him. He saw a man in the crowd he recognized, a low-level hustler from the Moretti crew. The man was staring, his phone already out, probably taking a picture. Danger. Exposure. Weakness. Luca's face, which had been stunned soft for a moment, hardened back into its familiar mask. It happened so fast it was like a door slamming shut. He reached up, his own movement quick and precise. He closed his hand over hers, not to hold it, but to firmly remove it from his tie. His fingers were strong, much stronger than hers. He pulled her hand away and dropped it, as if the touch now burned him. "Do not," he said, his voice low and icy. "Ever touch me again." He saw the smile vanish from her face, replaced by surprise, then a flash of hurt. Good. Let her be hurt. Let her be scared. It was safer for everyone. He turned sharply on his heel, his long coat flaring, and walked away. He did not run. Rossi never ran. But his stride was quick, cutting through the crowd that parted for him without knowing why. The festive joy around him now felt like a mocking noise. The tree lights were blinding, not beautiful. He needed his walls. He needed his silence. He needed to be a ghost again. Chiara stood frozen, her hand still tingling where his had gripped it. The cheers of the crowd for the tree felt distant and hollow. One moment he had been there, a man stepping into the light, his eyes wide with something like wonder. The next, he was a glacier, his touch like frostbite, his words a knife. "Do not ever touch me again." The sting of rejection was sharp. She had misread everything. He wasn't lonely, he was cruel. He wasn't sad, he was arrogant. A rich man playing a weird game on Christmas Eve. Humiliation burned her cheeks, hotter than the cold. What was that about? Sophie appeared at her side, eyes wide. "Nothing," Chiara said, forcing her voice to be light. "Just a mistake. My mistake." She turned her back on the spot where he had stood, trying to bury the strange, hollow feeling in her chest. She had a festival to run. She didn't have time for statues that came to life just to insult her. But as she walked back to her tent, her mind replayed it. The feel of the silk tie. The shock in his blue eyes when the lights came on. It hadn't all been cold. There had been a second of something real. Hadn't there? She shook her head, trying to clear it. It didn't matter. Back in his penthouse, Luca stood at the window. The festive square was a tiny, glowing postcard far below. The silence of his home was absolute again, but it felt different. It no longer felt like peace. It felt like emptiness. He could still feel the gentle pressure of her tug on his tie. He could still see her face, lit up by the tree. He had been a ghost for so long. He'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen. Truly seen. And for that 1 second, she had seen him. Not the boss. Just a man. And he had punished her for it. A restless energy filled him. He walked to his desk and pressed a button. Gabriel's voice came through the speaker. "Sir." "The festival in the square," Luca said, his tone all business. "There is a woman, Chiara Santoro. She is the organizer. Find out what she needs. Any permits, any fees. Handle it. Quietly. Make it an anonymous donation." There was a pause on the other end. Luca never got personally involved. Never. "Is there a problem, sir?" "No," Luca said too quickly. "She was a nuisance tonight. This is to ensure she has no reason to be a nuisance again. A payoff. Make it clean." He released the button and sank into his chair. It was a lie, and Gabriel probably knew it. It wasn't a payoff. It was a correction. A way to fix the hurt in her eyes that he had put there. A way to balance the scales, from the shadows where he belonged. He told himself it was to tie up a loose end. But in the deep, silent part of him that he never listened to, he knew the truth. He was trying to erase his own moment of weakness. He was trying to bury the memory of the light. The call came at midnight, as the last strains of Silent Night faded in the square. Chiara was bone-tired, sweeping up glitter and ribbon in her tent. The festival was over. It had been a success. But the warning text from the property company still glowed in her mind. At midnight, the permit expired. Her phone rang. An unknown number. "Miss Santoro? This is Officer Briggs. There's been an incident at your festival kitchen. A major water pipe burst in the building next door. It's flooded your storage and prep area. You need to come down." Her heart sank. The kitchen was in the old community hall basement, connected to the building next door. All their borrowed cooking equipment, the leftover food for the homeless shelter donation. It could all be ruined. She ran. When she arrived, it was a scene of cold, wet chaos. 2 inches of icy water covered the floor. Volunteers in boots were trying to lift boxes of pasta and cans of tomato sauce onto tables. The air smelled of damp concrete and wet cardboard. And standing in the middle of it, in his long black coat looking wildly out of place, was him. The man from the square. The statue. He wasn't watching this time. He was speaking quietly to a man in a suit who was nodding rapidly. A city inspector stood nearby. As Chiara stared, the inspector slapped a sticker on a now-dry electrical panel. "Back in business," the inspector said to the man in the suit. "Fast work." The man in the suit hurried away. The statue, Luca, she remembered the name from the officer. turned. His eyes found hers across the flooded room. There was no apology in his face. No warmth. Just a cool, assessing look. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice tight. "The building next door is mine," he said simply, as if that explained everything. "The pipe burst on my property, damaging yours. It is my responsibility to contain it." He had changed out of his suit jacket. His white shirt sleeves were rolled up to his elbows. His forearms were strong, with a faint tracing of dark ink. He had been helping, she realized. Directing his own people to bring industrial pumps, to move her things. He was fixing the problem he had caused. "You could have just sent someone," she said, confused by the contradiction. The cruel words earlier, the efficient action now. "I am here," he stated, as if his presence was a fact of nature, like the flood. He picked up a heavy, waterlogged box of donated toys before she could. He carried it to a dry corner with ease. He did not look at her again, but his presence filled the damp, chaotic room. He was a silent storm, managing everything. Chiara had no choice. She had to work alongside him to save what they could. They passed each other, moving boxes. Their hands brushed once, reaching for the same crate. They both pulled back as if shocked. For 2 hours, they worked in the same space, speaking only when necessary. "That one goes to the shelter. The pump goes there. Careful, the floor is slick." It was the strangest Christmas night of her life. Up to her knees in cold water, saving cans of soup, with the most frightening and fascinating man she had ever met. Finally, the water was gone. The volunteers left, exhausted. It was just the two of them in the cavernous, echoing hall. The only light came from a few bare bulbs. The silence was heavy. Chiara slumped against a dry table. She was soaked to the knees and shivering. He stood a few feet away, looking at the sad, deflated squid prop lying in a corner. "A casualty of war," she said, a tired attempt at a joke. He didn't smile. He walked over to it and picked it up. He looked at it, then at the now clean space where the Christmas tree in the square had been. "You fight very hard for this," he said. It wasn't a question. "It's my home," she said simply. "It was my father's dream. He's gone. The festival, it's like keeping his heartbeat going." He was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke, his voice lower, as if the words were being pulled from a deep, locked place. "My mother loved this square. At Christmas." He paused, and the silence felt fragile. "She would bring me here for a zeppole." She said the powdered sugar looked like snow on Christmas morning. Chiara held her breath. She didn't move. She died. On a Christmas Eve. A long time ago. He put the squid down gently. "I come to the square to remember. But I do not participate. I cannot." The confession hung in the damp air. This was why he watched. This was the source of the ghost. It wasn't cruelty. It was a pain so old and deep it had frozen him solid. "I'm sorry," she whispered. It was all she could say. He finally looked at her, really looked at her, his icy armor gone. In his eyes, she saw the little boy who had lost his mother and the man who had built a fortress because of it. "What you did tonight," he said. "Pulling me. It was the first time since she died that I felt present. At Christmas." He seemed almost angry about it, as if the feeling had betrayed him. "And then you ran," she said softly, not as an accusation, but an understanding. "I had to." He looked away. "Feeling anything. It is a vulnerability I cannot afford." But he had afforded it tonight. He had told her. He had shown her the old wound. And in showing it, the first crack in his ice had become a fissure. The cleanup was finished. There was no reason for him to stay. Yet, Luca did not leave. He stood by the door, seeming as unsure as she felt. The raw honesty of the last few minutes lay between them, delicate and new. "You're shivering," he stated. Before she could protest, he had shrugged out of his long, heavy wool coat. He held it out to her. It was an impossibly intimate gesture from a man who hours ago had forbidden her touch. "I can't take your coat," she said. "You are cold. The coat is warm. It is logic." His tone brooked no argument, but his eyes were softer now. She took it. It was incredibly warm from his body heat and smelled faintly of expensive soap and snow. She wrapped it around her shoulders, swimming in its size. It felt like a shield. A small, surprised laugh escaped her. "I look ridiculous." Something flickered at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, but the ghost of one. You look less cold. He walked to a small, salvaged hot plate and plugged it in. He found 2 undamaged mugs and a tin of cocoa powder. With a startling domestic competence, he made 2 mugs of hot chocolate. He handed one to her. They sat on 2 upturned crates in the empty, damaged hall. Steam rose between them. It was a truce. A fragile, quiet moment in the wreckage. She told him about her father, the baker, who believed a community was fed with more than bread. He listened, really listened, his eyes on her face. He told her, in short, careful sentences, about taking over his family's business too young. About the weight of it. He didn't say mafia. He said legacy and responsibility. But she heard the truth in the spaces between the words. They were from different worlds. A world of light and a world of shadow. But in this damp, dim room, with the taste of cheap cocoa on their tongues, the worlds didn't seem so far apart. For the first time, Chiara saw not a statue or a monster, but a man. A tired, lonely, deeply good man trapped in a bad life. And for the first time, Luca felt not like a ghost or a boss, but like a person. Seen, heard, and for this one moment, not alone. He looked at her, curled in his coat, her face tired but peaceful. A dangerous, warm feeling spread through his chest, melting the last of the ice around his heart. It was hope, and it was the most terrifying thing he had ever felt. The truce lasted a week. It was a week of stolen moments. Luca would appear at the cafe in the quiet hour before closing, not in a suit, but in a simple dark sweater. He would sit in the corner and drink an espresso while she finished her paperwork. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. His presence was a quiet hum in the space, a grounding force. He helped her truly fix the flood damage, sending skilled, discreet workers. He didn't just throw money, he solved problems. The permit issue vanished. The property company suddenly became incredibly cooperative. Chiara's world, which had felt like it was crumbling, now felt secure, wrapped in the strange, silent safety he provided. She began to let herself believe in the man she saw in the quiet moments, the one with the sad eyes and the careful hands. But his world was not quiet. His uncle Vincent was a man built from old stone and older grudges. He had watched Luca's father build their empire. He saw Luca's new distraction as a critical weakness. Vincent came to the penthouse. He did not sit. "The Santoro girl," Vincent said, his voice like gravel. "She is a hobby. A Christmas fancy. It ends now." Luca stood by the window, his back to his uncle. "She is not your concern. She is everyone's concern." Vincent slammed a fist on the desk. "You are seen with her. You are soft for her. The Moretti rats are whispering. They say Luca Rossi has a heart. They say they can reach it." Luca turned. The boss was back in his eyes. Cold. Hard. "No one will touch her. You are touching her," Vincent roared. "Every time you visit that little cafe, you paint a target on her back. The only way to protect her is to make her meaningless. To cut her out. Publicly." The logic was a knife to Luca's soul. It was the logic of his world. To love something was to make it a weapon for your enemies. The only way to keep it safe was to pretend you didn't care. He knew Vincent was right. He did it the next day in the cafe. He made sure it was busy. He walked in, not as the man in the sweater, but as Luca Rossi. The ghost. His suit was armor. His face was a mask of cold marble. Chiara's face lit up when she saw him, a sunbeam breaking through clouds. The light in her eyes killed him. He walked to the counter. The happy chatter in the cafe died down. People sensed the shift in the air. "Luca," she said, her smile fading. He placed a thick, sealed envelope on the counter between them. It was heavy with cash. "For the damages. And for your continued discretion," he said, his voice loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. It was the voice he used for business. Impersonal. Final. Her face went pale. "What are you doing?" "Our business is concluded," he stated, as if she were a contractor. He looked at her, but his eyes were vacant, seeing through her. "Do not contact me again. This should be more than enough to ensure your silence." He turned to leave. The silence in the cafe was absolute. Her voice, small and shattered, hit him in the back. Was any of it real? He stopped. Every cell in his body screamed to turn around, to take it back. He saw Vincent's warning. He saw a shadowy figure from the Moretti crew sitting in a car outside, watching. To protect her, he had to break her. He didn't answer her. He didn't look back. He walked out, leaving the envelope of money and the pieces of her heart on the counter. The door chimed, a cheerful sound that mocked the devastation inside. For Luca, the next 48 hours were a war. He tried to be the boss. He attended meetings. He gave orders. His words were sharp, his decisions brutal. He was more fearsome than ever. But he was hollow, a shell making noise. He would stand at his window and look toward little Naples. He could almost feel her hurt from 3 blocks away. It was a physical pain in his own chest. Gabriel found him there one evening. The meeting with the Moretti Capos is set for tomorrow night. At the warehouse, they expect a discussion on territory. Vincent believes it is time for a final show of strength. To end the whispers, Luca said nothing. He was looking at a single old photograph on his desk, one he rarely allowed himself to see. His mother, holding him as a boy, both of them smiling in this very square. "He's wrong, you know," Gabriel said quietly, a shocking breach of protocol. Luca turned. "Vincent," Gabriel clarified. "He thinks power is only fear. Your father, he knew it was also respect. And sometimes respect requires a different kind of strength." The old man's gaze was piercing. The strength to choose a different path. Gabriel left him alone. The choice was now a living thing in the room. Path 1. Go to the warehouse. Cement his power through the old, violent ways. Be the ghost forever. Let Chiara's light become a memory he drowned in regret. Path 2. For Chiara, the days were gray. She functioned. She opened the cafe. She served customers. But the spark was gone. The light in her eyes, the fight in her spirit. It was dimmed. He had made her believe in the man beneath, then shown her the monster was real. Sophie tried to cheer her up. He was a jerk, Chiara. A rich, emotionally stunted jerk. You're better off. Chiara nodded, but she didn't believe it. She had seen his pain. She had felt his goodness. It had been real. She knew it had, which meant his cruelty had been a choice. That hurt more. On the second night, as she was closing alone, she looked at the empty corner where he used to sit. She felt not anger, but a deep, weary sorrow. Not for herself, but for him. He had chosen his prison over his freedom, over their chance. She decided to light the small Christmas tree in her cafe window one last time before taking it down. A final, quiet salute to the hope that had briefly flickered. She plugged in the lights. They glowed, small and steadfast against the dark street. The warehouse was cold, echoing with tension. Luca stood facing the 3 Moretti men. Vincent was at his side, a satisfied gleam in his eye. This was the old way. Posturing. Threats. The promise of war or tribute. One of the Moretti men, a slick weasel named Joey, smirked. "Heard you've been busy playing house, Rossi. Cute. Does your new girlfriend know what you really do?" The insult hung in the air. Vincent tensed, ready for Luca to unleash fury. Luca just looked at Joey. He thought of Chiara's face in the cafe, shattered. He thought of her pulling him into the light. He thought of his mother's laugh. He had spent a lifetime building a fortress of fear. But the only thing he truly feared now was a life without light. He turned to Vincent. "This meeting is over." Vincent stared, dumbfounded. "Luca, what are you doing?" "I am choosing my fate," Luca said, his voice clear and calm in the vast space. He looked back at the confused, angry Moretti men. "Tell your boss the Rossi territory is not up for discussion. But there will be no war. Not over this. Not over anything that touches my people or my city." It was not a surrender. It was a redrawing of the map. A declaration that his power would now be used to protect, not just to possess. He walked out of the warehouse, leaving Vincent sputtering and the Moretti men in confused silence. He didn't get into his armored car. He walked. He walked 3 blocks through the cold night, his breath fogging the air. He walked to the glowing window of the Ginger Jar Cafe. He saw her inside alone, wiping down a table. Her small tree twinkled in the window. His heart hammered, not from fear of bullets, but from the terrifying vulnerability of what he was about to do. He opened the door. The bell chimed. She looked up. The color drained from her face. Pain, anger, and a flicker of that old, stubborn hope flashed in her eyes. He didn't move from the doorway. "The money was a lie," he said, his voice rough. The words in the cafe were a lie. Every cold thing I did was a lie. She said nothing, just held her cloth tightly. I thought my world would destroy you, so I tried to push you out of it. He took one step forward. I was wrong. You were never in my world, Chiara. You are a world of light. And I have been living in the dark for so long. He took another step. He was close enough now that she could see the raw, open truth in his eyes. No mask. No ghost. Just Luca. I am done being a ghost. I am done with the shadows. If you will have me, I want to learn how to live in the light. With you. He stopped, his fate resting in her hands, in the silence between them. Chiara looked at him. At the man who had broken her heart to save it, who had walked away from his throne to stand trembling in her cafe. She saw not the boss, not the statue, but the man from the flooded hall. The one who had shared his deepest wound over hot chocolate. She didn't smile. Not yet, but the ice in her eyes melted. Slowly, she walked around the counter. She stopped in front of him. She reached out, not for his tie this time, but for his hand. She took it, lacing her cold fingers through his. Okay, she whispered. But we're doing this my way. Starting with you helping me take down this tree. And then we figure out the rest. Together. He looked down at their joined hands, then back at her face. For the first time since his mother died, a true, unguarded smile touched Luca Rossi's lips. It was hesitant but real. Together, he agreed. He squeezed her hand, and for the first time in his life, he felt not like he was holding on for power, but like he was finally coming home. 1 year later. The Piazza San Marco is once again a sea of light and laughter on Christmas Eve. The massive tree glows brilliantly. But tonight, the man is not watching from the shadows. Luca Rossi stands in the very center of the light, his arm around Chiara's shoulders. He wears a dark sweater, not a suit jacket. He is smiling, a real, easy smile that has become familiar to the people here. He is not the ghost anymore. He is Luca, Chiara's Luca, who helps at the community kitchen and quietly ensures the local shops are free from protection fees. His business has changed. It is legitimate now. A security firm. A real estate development company that revitalizes, not intimidates. Vincent is gone, retired to Sicily. Gabriel runs the new operations with a proud, quiet efficiency. Chiara leans her head against his shoulder, watching the children dance. Her cafe is thriving. The festival is bigger than ever. She looks up at him. You're in the middle of it now. How does it feel? He looks around at the faces, the lights, the life. He feels the warmth of her beside him. He thinks of the long, quiet nights planning their future, of the difficult work of building something real, of the terrifying, beautiful freedom of being known and loved. He pulls her closer and presses a kiss to her forehead. It feels, he says, his voice full of a peace he never dreamed possible, like fate. If you believe in second chances, in light finding its way into the darkest places, don't let this be the end of ours. Hit that subscribe button, because here, every story is about finding your way home, and your spot is always reserved.